Now, Yemen's Houthi media say the rebels have attacked the Abha airport in Saudi Arabia with a cruise missile. Riyadh has not confirmed the attack. And there have been protests against the presence of Saudi troops near Yemen's border with Oman. The demonstrators want the Saudi Emirati coalition to scale back its military presence in the province of Al-Mara. Last year, Saudi Arabia promised to hand all local facilities in their control to Yemeni forces, but that hasn't happened. Well, let's speak now to Lawrence Korb, who was the U.S. Assistant Secretary of Defense and is now a senior fellow at the Center for American Progress. He joins us live from Washington, D.C. Lawrence, these unconfirmed reports of today's attack that we're hearing are of a cruise missile. And if it's confirmed, are we seeing an escalation here on the part of the Houthis?
Well, you've seen an escalation really in the last week. Whether this is a cruise missile or a drone, we've seen drone attacks on a lot of the Saudi airfields. And I think basically what the Houthis are saying, we were supposed to have negotiations. You haven't done them, so we're going to up the cost of your involvement in Yemen so we can have some sort of negotiations.
Well, Lawrence, I want to ask you more about these drone attacks as well. We have been seeing these attacks on Saudi airports and air bases. Does this signal a new campaign of particularly strategic targets?
Well, it does. And what it does is it is picking targets. For example, when they attacked with the drones to one of the air bases, that's where the Saudis kept their drones. So, yes, it is strategic. Obviously, if you attack the air base, this makes it hard for them to use aircraft to attack Yemen.
And, Lawrence, how are the Saudis likely to respond now?
Well, it's very difficult because the Saudis basically have gone all in, and they've had a tremendous amount of force that they've applied and led to, innumerable civilian casualties, which have turned the United States Congress against our involvement there and trying to stop the arms sales. So there's really not too much more they can do other than sending in ground forces, but their ground forces are not good. I mean, their air force is good, but their ground forces are not very good. In fact, you've got Sudanese forces are in there trying to help the Saudis.
Lawrence, we've seen this war continue with a worsening humanitarian crisis for some time. At least 250,000 Yemenis displaced just in the last 6 months since the UN brokered peace deal was signed in December. But the fighting's actually increased in that time? It
has. And basically, after the agreement was signed, everybody thought that the Saudis and UAE would back off. They haven't backed off, and the Houthis are responding now to basically say, you can't win, let's get the negotiations going, because nobody is winning right now.
And Lawrence, what next? Where do we go from here? This has been going on for such a long time. You talked about potential avenues in the U.S. Congress, but where to from here?
Well, basically, I think at some point, the Congress has passed 22 separate resolutions to stop particular arms sales to the Saudis, and they're getting more and more Republicans to support. We will cut it off because the Congress and the American people have basically turned against the Saudis in this war, and then, of course, with the way they handled what happened to Mr. Khashoggi. So at some point, the Saudis are going to have to change, because if they don't, they're going to lose American support.
Lawrence Korb, a former U.S. Assistant Secretary of Defense there, speaking to us from Washington, D.C. Thanks for being with us, Lawrence, on Al Jazeera.